So Taylor, thanks again for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you at Growth Hackers Conference last year, and it's great to have you with us.
Yeah,
Go
thanks for
ahead.
having me. This is exciting. I've mentioned in the previous event, I got a lot of my foundations from this community. So when I first started trying to figure out exactly what growth hacking was and how to do all these crazy things, there wasn't really the same degree of material out there. So like, yeah, I mean, there was some material, but in terms of being able to build these things, the growth hacking community of growthhackers.com has been a major asset, especially in the first couple of years where just no direction to go. So I really appreciate that. Cool. So I'm going to just jump into everything. I did a pre-recording of this and it went over an hour, so I am going to move faster.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Now we're recording. Now it's the real deal. I'm also recording on my end, and if you want the slides, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do not give my slides out to direct competitors. It's nothing against you. It's just that's the game that we play. So a little bit about me, 6-time startup founder, 14 years of digital marketing experience. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. metro area, but I've been in Denmark for the last 6 years. It's a crazy ride. I was the finalist of the Ecosystem Hero of the Year Award, and I have recently launched a bunch of new companies. So if you mess around with crypto or you're in Web3, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to put my LinkedIn in the chat. There's only one Taylor Ryan in all of Denmark, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. But yeah, I'm building a Web3 accelerator and a VC fund, so feel free to check out Near Nordic if you do have anything in the way of an interest in talking about growth hacking and digital marketing. I'm also down to connect, but yeah, I digress. Some of the businesses that I've been a part of that I've scaled either as the head of marketing or the leader within marketing or the chief marketing officer over the last 6 years are these guys. These were companies that I was employed as a full-time employee and not part of my agency, Clint. But that's Planday, Genie Belt, Actimo, and Valuer. And basically, I used the bulletproof tech stacks of basically combining different tools in order to automate a shitload of processes to get basically 4 exits, 1 IPO, 2 acquisitions, and 1 merger. This is a long way to go to say, I think I know my stuff. So hopefully I'm going to be able to impart some of that good stuff onto you. I love working with accelerators. So if anybody out there is part of an accelerator or is organizing stuff around accelerators, I dig this stuff. And if the energy comes off that you kind of maybe feel that I'm, I don't know, a little out there, it's because I really do love working with startups. I consider myself a startup junkie. So feel free to reach out if you're a part of that world. The agency that I run is called Clint. It's the Danish word for a cliff. We build up foundations, usually with tech stacks and automation, and basically impart a ton of growth hacks. So if you are looking to scale your company and you have a little bit of money, then let's jam out. If you are tight on funds or you want to get better as an individual, that's great. I have growthsecrets.org. And I charge the unreasonably low price of $49 to basically give people all the material of 8 hours of basically growth hacking and all the good stuff that I'm going to cover here today. Some of the models that we're all kind of after is this continuous growth type stuff, and I'm going to show how that works and some different ways that we can actually measure it. And yeah, my whole goal for today is to provide value. I'm not being paid to be here, so I just want to make sure that other people had the chance to learn all the same cool shit that I did when I was struggling to figure out how to do things and what early stage growth looked like, as well as continuous growth and innovation. So I have a pretty good idea of the types of people that were here. I did a little bit of stalking beforehand, but normally if I was in front of a crowd, instead of just speaking into a void of my own laptop, I would kind of do a little back and forth with the audience, but there's no sense in doing crowd work today. So let's get into a couple of different thoughts. So tools are just ingredients. I'm going to list a ton of different tools and websites and all that. And just think of it like ingredients. And maybe the recipe that I make is not your favorite recipe because that's not the tools that you like. So this is the technology landscape of marketing or MarTech in 2011. There's a fair bit of tools. In 2014, fair bit more. And in 2020, a shitload of tools. And the reality is it's continuing to grow. And the tools that I'm going to reference are just the ones that I've liked to use or have used in the past And it doesn't mean that they're the only ones out there. So feel free to find your own things, find your own tools, experiment. That's the whole name of the game. I do move very fast. I've been told that on numerous occasions. It's like drinking from a fire hose. They are recording this. I'm recording it as well. I will give you my slides so long as we are not direct competitors. All bets are off otherwise, but please connect with me on LinkedIn either way. I am Taylor Ryan on LinkedIn. You can't miss me. Go for it. Find me now. It takes all of 2 seconds. Cool. So I'm going to go into competitor insights, and there is an SEO angle here, but I find that most people don't really do the correct stuff when looking at competitors. So I'm going to hit all these different crazy things on the left side. So it's online channels, onboarding, user flow, web content, keyword analysis, social media analysis and inspiration, paid ads, backlink building, amplification, and advanced next level hacks. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of the different things that you can do. But let's take an angle here. So I presented this slide in Sweden a couple of years back, and like people started fucking fidgeting in their chairs because it made them uncomfortable. There's some ethics woven into whether or not you're comfortable with certain types of growth hacks. I'm going to address them either way. So this is an expression that we have in the States. It's not something that maybe is used everywhere, but if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And the whole idea is that there are elements within sports that do have rules, just the same as there are elements that do have rules within business. One of my favorites is the Steve Avery rule. You can see the guy that normally is supposed to be with his back to the goalie, and he's turned around and he's fucking with him. The reality is nobody had done that in professional hockey, much less the Stanley Cup playoffs. They had to pause the game and go through the rule book, and the referees were like, there's no rule against this. So, of course, they had an immediate emergency meeting to basically mitigate this. Like, you can't do that. That's not part of the game. And everybody remembers, who's from the U.S., part of the lip reading scandal of the Patriots, where they were reading the lips of the people that were calling the plays on either sides of the field. You also have it's so crazy. I asked my team if anybody had read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. It's one of my favorite books. I go through about a book a week on Audible. That's like a free plug. Go for it. Go nuts. I think it's a great way to just pick up stuff. So they had this competition. It was the Chinese Kickboxing National Championships. This guy had never done any kickboxing his entire life. And he read the rule book and found, hey, there's no issue with me shoving guys off of the platform. And if they get shoved off 3 times in a row, they are instantly disqualified. Ergo, he wins. So he ends up winning gold by basically taking advantage of this little opportunity. Now, there are other examples that are just using data where it's never been used before. There's a great movie called Moneyball, and it was the application of data in terms of how to go about picking the best potential players for your team. And as somebody that played football, Pop Warner, as an 8-year-old all the way up through high school, I became accustomed to reviewing game film of what my competitors did and what their flaws were and what the weaknesses are. We should be doing that within our own businesses. And if we're not, why aren't we? So before we get too deep, let's talk about some things that we can all agree on. I promise I'm going to get to the technical shit. Don't worry, it's coming. So the first thing...
You were asked by one of the people on the audience if it's possible to change to presentation mode instead of the presenter mode.
I didn't even realize I was doing that. Well, thank you. There you go. You guys got to tell me these things. Sorry about that. Okay, jumping back in. So every industry is different. I think we all could agree on that. And within every industry, there's different products and services, and those are going to be different. And within every product and service, there's different models that work and don't work. And so what you end up getting is basically a fractal of all kinds of different industries, businesses, products, models, you name it. And so what may work for some doesn't work for everybody. But the reality is somebody has already built what you're trying to do. Somebody has already managed to do really well at selling or monetizing what it is that you're angling at. If they haven't, it means that maybe it doesn't exist because it's not possible, or it's really quite difficult to actually try to forge your way directly through the stone of the mountain rather than walking around. But I try to tell my people internally, do not build from zero. Somebody has already done it. Whether or not it's the same industry, somebody's done it. So where does this exist in the wild? I always ask my people that because it's super important to make sure that this is a materialized thing that actually has worked out and is functional and exists. I always challenge startups with this. Show me somebody that's built something similar. It doesn't need to be a one-for-one competitor. Show me something in the world that actually has happened. This is the isostatic adjustment. So there's no such thing as a triangular or square planet. The amount of space, the volume that one object can actually hold is usually in the shape of a sphere because it is the most minimal shape. The idea is that there are certain business models and certain practices that are that minimal shape, and they exist only in that way. We need to get better at discerning what good looks like. Experience is one of the best ways, and quite honestly, the only way to really get there at first. I try to kind of figure out what makes a competitor good. I've worked with a lot of architects on a SaaS project, and one of my favorite tenets within architecture is you can't say something sucks without giving a reason for it. You can't just be like, oh, it's ugly. It's like, tell me why it's ugly. So I think it's also important to note that experts and really smart people also make amateur mistakes. So you have to be able to be aware, or at least acknowledge that that is something that exists. So let's go into a couple of little ethics real quick. The bottom right is an example of Zoom, and that's the platform that we're on right now. And then there's a competitor that came out of the blue, and they're called GeoMeet, and they basically completely just one-for-one copied. Those guys are assholes. Like, there's a difference between using something as inspiration and outright copying. And I'd like to think that we can discern the difference. This is not legal advice with some of the different things that I'll show you. I am not advocating for copycat startup building or stealing in general. With that being said, there are plenty of examples of this stuff existing in the wild. Instagram Stories was basically something that was created out of their inability to acquire Snapchat, and they tried to put Snapchat out of business with those. Kickstarter was the original crowdfunding platform. Indiegogo came out. Everybody knows iOS. Android decided to build their own app store. I mean, this is what innovation has been since the beginning of time. Nobody talks about Siebel, but they were the real first CRM on an enterprise level. Kmart started in the 1800s. Walmart came around in the 1960s. I'm based out of Denmark, Copenhagen, and everybody's like, oh, Lego, it's this amazing thing. It's like, yeah, well, you know, the reality is there was this thing called Kitty Craft Self-Locking Building Bricks. Really bad name. But the reality is that was first, and then Lego copied them. So a couple of other examples of cloned SaaS startups that have a very local feel. Netflix has iFlix, that's the Philippine competitor. Uber has Didi in China. Airbnb has Wimdu in Germany. Groupon has Daily Deal in Germany. Birchbox had many clone competitors. They just acquired Joliebox not long ago. PayPal has Bill Pay. And just for reference, all the German ones that I was talking about are all created by the same group of guys. It's the Samwer brothers. Look them up. It's crazy. In an internal memo, one of the guys was quoted as saying, "I will die to win, and I expect the same from you," addressing his entire company. That's ballsy. I don't know. You have to decide kind of where your line is, and that's not for me to judge, but yeah, I hope you don't try to do that on my businesses. So let's first start with building a list of competitors. Super easy. You can copy this. If you get my slides, I'll have it linked in here as well. But basically, we're looking for company name, URL, usually blog URL, some social signals. Organic traffic is super interesting to sort by, and any other things that might matter for you. And just off of this list, I'm going to be able to show you how to do a bunch of crazy things. That's the skyscraper technique. That's a social media analysis, ads research, web sections, tech stack, all these. You guys can read. You get the idea. So let's dig into a couple of other things before we launch into individual hacks. So how do we find competitors? It's a popular search engine. It's called Google. And off the top of your head, you should be able to name a couple, but maybe you need to search by the benefits or the results or the features, whatever the case is. Unique selling propositions, just start building a few of these out. The next step is then we want to throw it into a tool that is easy to use that allows you to find competitors based off of SEO. This is an example for SimilarWeb because I did a very similar presentation for those guys. Another way of basically generating the types of companies that would be in competition with you or with your competitors, and then you're able to export really easily, so it's kind of nice. This is SEMrush. Lots of people use SEMrush because you get 8 lookups a day, and it's kind of halfway down the page, so there you go. My favorite tool is Ahrefs. It starts at a minimum price of $100, but I think it does a decent job. This is filtered by country, but you still get the competitors in there. So super easy to find competitors. Let's say you don't want to use those. That's fine. There's a shitload of other tools off to the right side. All of those are different ways of finding competitors, and you can work your way through each of them. The reality is, I don't think the CEO of the company should be doing this. This is a job for an intern or a virtual assistant, but fine. Just remember that no tool is perfect. Maybe you're building a SaaS tool and you're looking for SaaS competitors. These are a bunch of different listing platforms and review sites that allow you to find your competitors as they are basically categorized for you. Super easy. If you are seeing your competitors on there, you should be right there next to them. Never pay for a listing. I don't see why it's worth it. Now we want to categorize competitors. I have core competitors, feature competitors, and industry competitors. So a while ago, I had a client that was an EV charging app for EV vehicles. They didn't sell the hardware, they didn't sell the cars, so that meant that they had very few core competitors. Feature competitors was a little different. There was a couple of folks that kind of played in that space, and then a ton of industry competitors. So you might be the same because not everybody is in the same space as you. Cool. So let's explore competitors a little bit more because there's lots of different things that most people don't do, and I find it just completely baffling. So you should sign up and follow all of your competitors. So I follow all of my competitors on social media. I've signed up for all of their newsletters. I test out their platform, and I log in every once in a while just to see if anything's changed. I check out their tech stack. I know all of their keywords, which you should be doing at the earliest days. I export all their backlinks, and I know what features are kind of their core selling points. And yeah, in the past, I've also snagged some of their best and worst customers. And ultimately, these are different ways to get ideas. So let's work our way through some of the ways that we can do this. So following on social media is super easy. Like, we all should have social media. I assume we do. And the reality is, the volume of organic reach across every social channel is just non-existent. It's super low, and I'll go into why. But it also should tell you, let's say I'm using Intercom. They're an inbound marketing tool here. They don't have a TikTok presence, and I couldn't really find them on Pinterest. Maybe it's not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, and sometimes it's extra effort. But the reason that I'm following is I'm looking to see, do they have a presence, and is it a legit presence? It's just kind of like passing the sniff test. Can I get some ideas? Is there some content for inspiration? Are they running events? At which case, I might want to snag all the people that attend to that event. Is there a lot of frequency and activity? Is there brand consistency? I just need to feel them out. Here's why social media reach is abysmal. You can check out the Intercom LinkedIn page or the Intercom Facebook page. Any market leader, go for it. And you'll see that there are an astronomical number of followers. So in this case, Facebook with 40,527 people. Yet there are a number of posts that even the fucking person that wrote the post didn't like it. You can also see this on LinkedIn. So with 52,000 followers, they had 5 people engage. It's not worth the effort. And here's why that's happening. So in 2011, LinkedIn announced, hey, we made $4.5 million in ad revenue. Check us out. 5 years later, that was $154.1 million, which isn't bad. And then just 5 years after that, they topped $3 billion in ad revenue. They are printing fucking money. And good for them. I mean, hey, if I was basically in charge, I would be maybe tempted to do the same thing. And where else are you going to go? Friendster? So the reality is these platforms realize that as they turn down your reach and your ability to access more people, you're actually more willing to pay in order to get a greater reach. So organic is super difficult across these platforms. But there are interesting spaces that you can find communities, and you can basically curate the content and then be able to rinse and repurpose and reuse that content almost as your own. So what I do is I collect, categorize, I tweak and repurpose it so it doesn't feel exactly like it's original, and then I use a scheduling or automation tool to basically repost. You can also do this with your competitors based off of their top content, and I'll show a couple of different ways later. There are a ton of really big social media hacks that I would love to go into, but today is not about social media. The kind of next level tool that I've been just in awe of is Bright Data. And for those in the audience that have a little money to throw around, you should fuck with this tool. It is next level. It runs off of a proxy. I've used Illuminati for a while. I think they rebranded, but either way, it allows you to basically do at scale the type of scraping that very few people have been able to do manually or any other way. So you're able to basically set up the proxy, add a channel, extract all the competitor content from each channel, organize by highest engagement, extract the post, and the media that goes along with it. Then you tweak, edit, repurpose, schedule, and publish. So you're basically using your competitors as inspiration to make some of the best content that has existed, and it's proven by social proof. If lots of people are liking it and it works over here, it's going to work right over there. So easy, really easy way of getting it done rather than just guess and check. So website inspiration. I build a lot of websites these days, and I find that there's so many different ways to do it, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that there's riders that go with websites the same as there's riders and contracts. So I don't know how many people are familiar with Van Halen, but they were the ones that basically created this little segment inside of the contract that says when we show up inside of the green room or the area where the band hangs out before they go on stage, we want a big bowl of M&Ms. But absolutely no brown ones in there. No brown M&Ms can be inside of this bowl. And if the venue got it wrong, the show was canceled, they got paid in full, and inevitably the venues learned how to actually reach the same type of, asks that Van Halen was putting out. Now, why did they say that? Because invariably they brought in a lot of their own gear, they were doing pyrotechnics, meaning fireworks, and if they fucked up a little detail like brown M&Ms, you better believe they also messed up the right types of cords, the staging, the equipment, the gunpowder for the pyrotechnics. All of those invariably would be broken too. So I have indicators or riders within my contract when I see a bad website. So when you're looking at your competitors and you see large swaths of data on the homepage like this, that's a junk website. Toss it out. When they don't understand how spacing works between sections and uniformity between colors, like real basic stuff, or they're using shit clip art, throw them out. They're not really a competitor. Or they do this shit. Like, come on, guys, like pull together. How hard would it be to actually do a background removal of all 3 clicks, to basically make sure that you're using logos that people can see and it doesn't make you look like it's amateur hour. These are little things that pop up that anybody can come into. So this is my landing page cheat sheet. If you go to growthsecrets.org, it's one of the giveaways at the very bottom. This allows anybody who wants to basically see all of the sections that are required and are needed for a standard SaaS software as a service landing page. Go for it, go nuts. There's also plenty of other places. You don't have to come to me. These are 4 different sites that have hundreds and collectively thousands of examples of decent landing pages. Go for it. So in terms of the way that I use my competitors, I will often map out my best competitors when it comes to core pages. I'll then talk about the specific sections within each page and stuff for kind of general inspiration. I use the traffic light method. So it's basically green is good UX, light green is like yellow is like one good element, and red is bad. Then I'm able to use my competitors' websites to basically build a functional version of what I want my website or my landing page that I'm going to be driving ad traffic to be built out. So it starts with the home page, then you go into the value or whatever this was for a crypto client. So like trading volume. Often there's within here like logo sections and trust building, whatever, but you get the idea. So each section has a purpose, and I've screenshotted my favorites from each of the competitors so that I have the best of all of my competitors as a framework for my landing page. You can do this too. And hey, it works on e-commerce just the same. So start taking a look at what your competitors have done really well in terms of little assets that maybe you didn't put in there. And each one of them might end up giving you a slight bump, 0.5% in conversion rates, which could be thousands of dollars every month and hundreds of thousands every year if you have a big enough online presence. See what's missing. And just the little idea of scratching out the old price and giving a slightly lower new price might be enough of an indication in terms of pricing psychology for somebody to be like, oh, I'm getting a deal, why not? These are little things that we all can do and are super easy. Let's go into tech stacks. It's one of my favorite areas. I would love to be like, hey, how many people are using Wappalizer? I've been using Wappalizer for years. It's easy. It's a Chrome extension. It's free. So go nuts, like install it. It's easy. The competitor to them is what runs. It's kind of like, like it's not very good, but fine. I think my new favorite player on the block is Web Tech Survey. It's a free website. You go to webtechsurvey.com. And with Wappalizer, I found 17 tools on top of my website. With Web Tech Survey, going to Clint Marketing, I found 54. So it's a much better tool in terms of really peeling back the layers to figure out what are your competitors using to build, I don't know, exit intent pop-ups or whatever tools that they were using for tracking or whatever the case is. So I can tell a lot by just looking at the outside of a website. So there's different types of CMSs, content management systems. If somebody's using WordPress, they probably know their way around, maybe Contentful or Webflow, that's fine. If they're using Squarespace or Wix, it's like, all right, first website, I gotcha. If it's Adobe Experience Manager, they don't know the cost of a website and they're spending way too much money on it. Analytics is a standard. Every website should have it. I'm super bummed out with GA4 being basically required, and that's going to be the new jam in July. I'm bummed out just as much as anybody else. Ads tracking means like they know what they're doing. Hearing somebody grumbling in the background. All right, we're good. Technical SEO tools. So if they're using caching, lazy loading, CDN, those should be in there. And this is where I start to see whether or not they have a real marketing engine behind them or they know what they're doing. And that's where I can find marketing automation tools. Like I know if they're an e-commerce platform, they should be using probably Klaviyo. If they're kind of figuring things out and they don't really know their way around, they're probably using HubSpot. Active Campaign, if they have a little bit of an edge. If they're old school and they're dictated by their sales team and nobody else, then it's probably Salesforce. If it's amateur hour, it's MailChimp. If they're starting to kind of feel things out, then, or they got sold on something, they're doing screen recordings. A/B testing really indicates to me that there's a strong data-driven marketing team behind the company. If they're using tools like, how do we mute this? There we go. Cool. Thank you. If they have a chatbot tool, it means that they have a leg up on the customer success side. And if there's anything in the way of IP enrichment, then it means that they're definitely sales focused, which is an interesting company that I would want as a client or somebody to work with. Cool. Moving right along. Let's take a quick example. I find a crypto client, and those are the only tools that I can see from the outside. It means that they have a custom-built website, and it's a super technical crew. So that's going to be a tough lift to get them to understand really the purpose behind some of the SEO stuff. There's no Google Tag Manager, which means they have no goal tracking, which is pretty consistent within crypto. No marketing automation. It's going to be tough sledding for those guys. Another example would be an accounting company. It's like, cool, you guys got Wix. Nice job. First website. I gotcha. It's going to be really difficult to scale this up in a meaningful way because I just don't see the foundations making sense. A healthcare company that's removed all tracking, super old school. This is an old client of mine, and I can tell you right now that's going to be very messy with actually being able to attribute goals and show growth. Let's move on to some quick checks that anybody can do, and there's some of my free favorite tools. Go to SEO Site Checkup, and you can put your own website in there as well as competitors. This will allow you to see if there is a sitemap present in a robot.txt file. I'm not going to go into the importance of that, but it is interesting, but I don't know. I'm limited on time. Broken link checkers, there's an extension for Chrome that does that, which is fine. I actually just use SiteLiner. It's a free tool. You can also use Screaming Frog. Like almost every SEO analysis tool does this. There's free ones, there's paid ones. SiteLiner's free. Cool. Let's move on to conversion rate optimization because I think that's where some of the cool experiments come from that I end up using my competitors as kind of guinea pigs or inspiration. So there's lots of different types of conversions out there, and using your competitors to figure out like, oh, you guys have a buy now button and a demo button. Interesting. I need to try that. Or you have hearing people like jump in. You have A/B testing opportunities to be able to see like why did they use that image versus that one. There's resources in terms of calculators and downloadables and webinars, and there's lots of different form fields and different things that you can experiment with. I try to figure out all the different ways that my competitors are converting people, whether it's just lead ads, meaning you are converting on a social media platform, and they also have it for YouTube and Google Ads now, but maybe they're doing it over top of video, or there's an exit intent pop-up, or banners. Like these are things that you should be like, I wonder why they're doing that. Maybe I should try that and see if it works. Or they have just native conversion forms, or there's notification conversions, or even webinar conversions. All of these should be a long laundry list of things that you need to test out on either home pages, landing pages, or anything else that you need to kind of start seeing if you can get more people to convert in the same amount of time. I'm not going to go into all the nuances of conversion rate optimization. It's one of my favorite areas, but the whole concept behind this is basically every step that you put between somebody and the amount of money that they want to give you is a chance for them not to give you money. So if you have 20 steps between now and when I actually get to give you money, there's 20 different chances for me to be like, fuck it, I got bored, I left. Sorry, not interested. So we're trying to minimize the amount of steps, see what your competitors are doing, and maybe there's an inspiration or an opportunity there. Email copy is one of the areas that most marketers really screw up. There's all kinds of email flows, and what I do is I sign up for all of my competitors. I'll either use burnermail.io. You can also just do temp email inside of Google, and you'll find lots of them. But yeah, you basically get the welcome. You can find emails that are related to North Star metrics and case studies, and all of these things like allow you to get a really good feel for how they're marketing to people, how they're onboarding people, whether or not they're providing follow-ups with resources, what the nature of the newsletters are. Are they super mile-long things that nobody reads, and I promise you they don't? Are they super short the way that Noah Kagan does them? Are there hard selling elements of these? Is it all value-based? This should give you an idea of what you can toy with and play with yourself. I just think that there's so many different things to do within, these. So I collect at scale shitloads of this stuff. So like I literally have hundreds of templates. And there's general marketing templates that just have subject lines, newsletter type of things that are narrative based and different types of those resources and all these other things. Inbound stuff, there are so many great templates out there for inbound. And then maybe you're looking for different types of flows that are related to sales, customer service, partnerships, and PR. Literally hundreds of hours that you don't have to do yourself. So actually, let me go back just one here. So go to reallygoodemails.com or go to Mild, and there's a bunch of examples, or just sign up for your competitors. And after you sign up for your competitors, you can just use an AI writer to spin the content. So now it's original and it doesn't look like you borrowed anything or stole, whatever we're going to call it. Those are the tools that I've used off to the right. There's literally a new one every hour. I mean, GPT-3 is open source these days. It's basically what's built on all of these things. And any of these tools that you go into, you can immediately find like, oh, cool, you have a recipe for building cold emails or building inbound or whatever the case is. Super easy. You're just adding a little more context, adjusting the triggers, add your little branding, flair, tone, whatever you want to call it. Swap out your resources and links for theirs or vice versa. And hyper-personalization if you know how to do it. Cool. I often map out the flows because I find that there's just so many variables with doing anything in the way of inbound marketing, much less any other type of marketing. So one of the things that I think often help is using a tool like draw.io, and this is draw.io, and I got I got sold by the ads of Geru, and it's not a great tool, so I'm not recommending buying it. But the idea is that pretty much every little icon there represents an email campaign with unique email content. So if you can just get on somebody else's mailing list and repurpose the material and make it your own and make it better, then you don't really have to spend countless hours, hundreds of hours building this stuff out. And either way, I run an agency that does that for you. So I'm happy to do that if that's of interest. Let's look at onboarding, because I feel like I've talked with so many founders that don't look at their competitors' onboarding. The first thing that I look for is, do you have a tutorial? If you've ever played any video game in the fucking world, they start you off with the worst mission or the worst thing. It's like, pick up that can, throw it, and it's like, okay, square, triangle. Right, it's the same thing when being dropped off in a platform with all kinds of things that you've never seen before. So give people a chance to walk through, and if your competitors aren't doing it, it means they suck, which is great for you. The retention side of this is its own presentation. I would love to go into basically all the different hacks of retaining users or stopping users from basically cutting off and canceling their contract with you. It's one of the biggest silent startup killers. People don't realize you spend so much money to acquire a customer, and then if they leave within the first 2 months, you haven't actually made the money back, so you're losing money. It's baffling how many people don't do that. So let's look at a couple of quick ways of how to basically find and steal your competitors' best customers. I think this is a super interesting one, and it's definitely kind of a different play, and it feels very growth hacky-esque. So there's lots of leftover kind of mementos from people that have actually worked with your competitors. And they come in the form of trust signals or logos across the website. Maybe they're case studies. Maybe they're even testimonials. Whatever the case is, you can find them because people like bragging about who they've worked with. So that's an opportunity for you to be able to collect these and then reach out. Here's another way is reviews. And I've run scrapers across pretty much all of the platforms that are off on the right side there. It shouldn't be too difficult in order to aggregate enough of these if you're looking at really big scale competitors. And you can do this off of Google reviews, Trustpilot, whatever the case is. It's easy enough. And now you have kind of a list of people that's interesting to reach out to. Or you find the competitors of that list, and that's where it gets interesting. So the thought would be, if you find the competitors of the best customers of your competitor, now you have a whole new list of people to go after. So it's kind of like the enemy of my, the friend of my enemy is my enemy. I don't know. Either way, I'm going to move on. Simple enough. I do find that a lot of people don't realize that there's tools out there if you're operating in a very narrow field or segment and it's technology based. BuiltWith is probably my favorite. I think public www.com is the new kick-ass player on the scene. But let's say you only work with e-commerce companies. Awesome. That means that you can only collect and only filter for companies that use Shopify and are within a certain space and are within a certain demographic and a certain geo. And all of a sudden, you have a pretty decent list to work with and start finding competitors of them. And all of a sudden, you have just an endless list of competitors, which is outstanding. Other ways, find people bitching and moaning on the internet. That's what the internet's for, right? So you can go to ParseHub, Follower Wonk, and basically insert the name of competitors. I think social searcher is one of my favorite tools. Type in your brand name as the keyword, and you'll find all the things that you've posted and also some things that maybe you didn't know that people were saying about you. Staying organized is like crucial. I do a lot of innovation workshops for innovation labs for larger organizations, and one of the areas I often see them mess up is standard project management with being able to build in-house resource basically guides in Google Sheets or whatever they're using. And it's super helpful to have the consistency across each of these types of collections. And by the way, this is not the type of stuff that a CEO should be doing. This is a virtual assistant or a marketing kind of early level person or even an intern. If I have all these lists of companies now, the competitors of my competitors' best customers, then I would potentially be able to run ads directly against them. So I can do company level targeting. I just need 300 of them, which is great. And they're going to be people that could potentially use my product. I will construct an outreach message, and I will usually do a sequence of 3. I'm just going to quickly show you the structure of an outreach message because most people, well, everybody fucks it up, and I don't understand why. So it starts with an intro, you add a human element, a little spice in there, you show what you've done in your research, you create a little bit of intrigue and some mystery, add FOMO, credibility, a guarantee if you can, and some type of risk reversal before your call to action. So this is the structure with the actual content and a merge field, but you get the idea. Hi, competitor, customer, first name. Inserts human elements. I know you're busy and this is out of the blue. It gives them a chance to empathize, like, well, I wasn't going to read the rest, but you've been nice about it. Show that you've done your research. I saw you're using insert name of your competitor. Create intrigue. So we're a little different. We do whatever your key differentiator is. Then you want to create some FOMO. So companies that have switched to using us get impressive metric, whatever that is that you guys do. Hopefully you have an impressive metric. If you don't, like, what the fuck are we doing? Moving on. Credibility. We've got a ton of case studies proving that we can insert the name of the benefit and what the metric is related to that benefit. Guarantee. If we can't get you key result in a time frame, then I will happily give inserts whatever the guarantee is, 50% back, or I don't know. You're going to have to work it out, see what you can do. People really like the risk reversal stuff. I had no idea how powerful it was until I started using it myself. And then a short call to action, I found that nobody clicks my Calendly links. It's super frustrating. So giving people a chance to respond manually and then sending over your calendar actually works better. It's super frustrating. So can we take a short 15-minute call so I can show you, insert the name of your company, what I can do for you. Cool. I do a ton of outreach. I've built a tool called Clint Data that basically scrapes 25 different job boards for intent data. It's awesome, and it's been a crazy good ride. I show how to do this stuff in my course, but today is not about doing outreach, so I'm not going to go into super deep detail on outreach. But you can take my course. What's up? growthsecrets.org. So let's go into traffic analysis, because that's getting more into the SEO side of things, and you guys have stuck around long enough for that. So I can tell a lot by just understanding where traffic has come from. One of my favorite movies, Forrest Gump, there's that quote, like, you can tell a lot about a person by their shoes. I can tell an immense amount of stuff by the traffic breakdown of a single website. So if they have a lot of direct traffic, it means either their tracking is kind of wonky, or they have brand recognition, which means they've been around for a while and they've probably done something right as a company. In terms of email marketing, if it's very little or very low, it means that they haven't invested time in building up resources, and there's an opportunity to kind of leapfrog them over there. If there's a little referral traffic, it means they haven't figured out PR and they don't do much in the way of guest posts. These guys have an average amount, so it's not an incredible amount. So they're not really putting their content onto other websites or doing a ton of PR opportunity for you. If it's relatively low on social media usually makes up about 5 to 10% max of most companies' traffic. So this is pretty consistent with the average. If they're doing organic search and it makes up the largest portion, or more than 50, it means they know what the fuck they're doing in marketing, and they're probably pretty good at building content. And that's one of the areas that as SEO marketers, we need to start saying, okay, cool, what are you guys doing? The other side is, like, if they're running a little bit of paid search, that's cool. Let's see what they're working on and figure out if it's something that we want to take for ourselves. The whole idea is, like, I try to organize my top competitors by traffic, because that in a roundabout way is the most successful thing that you can do. If you are generating a ton of traffic and you're not converting, then you probably shouldn't be a business. But the reality is that has shown that you've gotten through the front door. You have figured out how to grab people and pull them into your world. That's the first half of the battle. Converting them is the other side. So if I know that I have all the backlinks for all my competitors, I can toss it into Ahrefs. So just put their company URL, the website, into Ahrefs or SEMrush. I can get the export of all the referring domains, or backlinks as we're going to call them, right? Then I can go through, and they're basically listed out in different ways. They fall into these categories. So either they're guest posts, they're partnerships that came from outreach of some sorts, maybe a little bit of amplification. Many of them are going to be profile and listing sites. So, like, where have they been listed online? A lot of them are going to be PR opportunities, and some might be broken or dead links. But for the most part, that's kind of the breakdown. And anything that turns into a listing site, that's an opportunity. I want to put my billboard right next to the billboard that they created. So when somebody's in the consideration stage, where they're trying to decide what product they're going to actually bite on, what they're going to pay for, you want to be right next to them, but hey, what about me though? And that's a really great opportunity for you. So I've shown earlier for SaaS, there's a listing and directory site for literally everything. Type into Google listing site for whatever your industry is, and you'll find it. Again, do not pay for this stuff. It should be free. It is what it is. The skyscraper technique was coined by Brian Dean of Backlinko, who I was astounded. He actually just recently sold his website. The guy's an absolute badass. If you go to backlinko.com, he's got tons of really interesting guides. The whole concept behind the skyscraper technique is kind of a cutesy little narrative. So in the old days in New York City, due to the confines of engineering, you could only build a building up to about 90 floors. And the whole idea was somebody thought to put a giant needle on top of their building, and for a very brief period of time, they had the tallest building in all of New York City, and ergo all the world. We need to think about content that way. If we could find all of our competitors' best pieces of content, make a longer, more detailed, more interesting, more thorough version, then we could potentially capture everybody that was originally going to go to our competitor's site and bring them over to our site. Think about it like taking the best player from your opposing team and making them play for your team. I created an article on my website, clintmarketing.com, where we went through some of the top players within different fields. And in many cases, 80% of the traffic came from 1 to 2 articles. That will definitely be the same case within your industry. So the idea is that I want to find my competitors' best content. So I'm looking for stuff articles that have a minimum of 250 keywords. Anything less than that, and it's kind of like, nah, you guys didn't really nail it. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but they always break down into the same kinds of content. So you'll have the core pages of the website. Those are always going to garner a lot of attention. You have general articles and blogs, and that's a list and an article that have a baby and they become a listicle. Or you have articles in industry news or thought leadership. And then I think some of the harder stuff to create, but the more valuable stuff is resources. That's definitions or glossaries. It's templates, downloadables, ebooks. You guys can read guides and stuff like that, case studies sometimes, and calculators. And then there's kind of like an other section, and that's usually something of value as well. It's infographics, quizzes, that kind of stuff. So now I literally have all of my competitors. I have all of their best content. And now I get to pick and choose. And this is like the core of being a data-driven marketer. If you don't have this shit, then like get out of the game. Like it's so crazy to me. But the idea is like I know what produces the most amount of traffic of all of my competitors. Now I just get to pick and choose which one I want to recreate and do a better job. Now bear in mind, it's not going to be super easy to leapfrog over if you're starting from absolute zero. But you know, because social proof has taught us that people are engaged with this. This is drawing in a ton of traffic. There is a high likelihood that you will capture some of the keywords that they're already ranking for and bring users to your website that would have gone to your competitor's website. Super easy, really easy stuff to do. And now you don't have to, as a marketer, listen to the C-level dipshits that are full of great fucking ideas. I couldn't stand it as a chief marketing officer. That's why I built my own companies. Cool. So let's look at some competitor keywords because I think it's a ton of fun. It's super interesting. I'm going to try to race through this. I think there's so many great YouTube videos on how to basically generate keyword lists. I'll briefly show you my way. So I can export all of the top keywords from my competitors using a tool like SimilarWeb or Ahrefs. Super easy to do. I'm always looking for competitors. Like if you don't have 1,000 keywords as one of my competitors, I don't consider you a real competitor. Come back when you've actually built something. Like it's crazy. And I'm looking for the keyword volume of the keywords that I'm extracting or exporting to be a minimum of 300 global volume. Like if it's not more than that, it's not really worth it. And then I'm creating these individualized segments, and these are basically my core themes. And the core themes can be related to the definition of the company or the functionality of what you kind of get. Industry buzzwords, sometimes features, sometimes benefits. And I'm trying to avoid putting stuff that has a really low search volume and nothing in the way of a click-through rate, because if it doesn't work over there, it's not going to work over here. And if it's just too competitive, like then there's no point. And after that, I'm basically just exporting all of these together. I focus on KEI, the Keyword Efficiency Index, which is high search volume, lots of people are searching for it, and low keyword difficulty, meaning it doesn't appear in a lot of places. And that's really all that we're doing is we're just creating these buckets and then going down rabbit holes. And what you ultimately get is these really monstrous clusters of keywords that are related to exactly what you're building based off of your competitors. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you feel like turning these into maybe ads or turning these into something else. It is important to pull out the cost per click information because in many cases, if you're ranking number one organically for a keyword that costs $100 per click, it does happen. It means you're saving $100 every time that somebody comes to your website rather than having to pay to be at the top of Google. So something to think about. And there's lots of different ways to do this. Some people like to organize the entire thing by search volume to be able to pick what keywords they're really going to focus on, but this doesn't allow you to do a ton of clustering. I digress. I try to kind of build these out into the core and subpages, the general articles and blogs and resources and other stuff. There's just way too much to cover. But if you're not doing this when you're building your website, when are you planning on doing it? And I find that most people just don't. So yeah, like it's a super easy thing. Honestly, watch a couple of YouTube videos, get a couple of tries of doing it, and I think you'll get better practically overnight. I have my own way of doing it. Everybody has theirs as well. But one little thing that I always forget to mention, keyword cannibalization. You cannot rank for the same key phrase across numerous pages on your website. It was one of the Google core updates that came out that was basically the diversity update, which had nothing to do with like diversity from like woke culture. It was basically you can't rank for the same thing twice. Cool. I want to pause, but let me just quickly go through ad stuff. I knew I wasn't going to get through all this. I'm an idiot. I created like well over like 150 slides. Real quick on competitor ad stuff, because it's a game changer. There are lots of platforms that allow you to export the ad copy of your competitors. SimilarWeb does this. Ahrefs, it kind of does it a little bit. But these can either be completely copied or ideas for kind of inspiration. You basically reword using one of the AI spinners, and then you add some structure. If a campaign has been running for more than 3 months, it means it's performing well enough that they're not losing money on it. Or they're absolute idiots and have no idea how to manage ads, and yeah, it's not worth copying. But I'll show you why that's important in a minute. So this is just an exported spreadsheet of some of the ad research that I did for my competitors. There is gold in them there hills, meaning there is tons of value in that, because that is everything that my competitors currently spend most of their money on in terms of advertising to the masses. So they always kind of break out into individual fields. It's either brand related, specific to them, competitor related, technology features, intent, and the way that I'll end up then taking that information and structuring some different campaigns. I focus on the vertical or the industry, pain or value based, competitor based, or technology based. Then I'll do some A/B or ABC testing, split testing, and then I'll test it across platforms to see, does this work? You can do this across LinkedIn, you can do this across Facebook, you can see all the ads historically that other companies have run, or you can run through AdBeat. It'll cost you $500, but it's worth it. And my favorite feature of AdBeat is showing this, which is the time that the ad was running. If somebody has spent the amount of money to keep this thing online for 3 months or more, it means it's working, or they're an idiot, and you're going to have to decide. It's very difficult. And in some cases for clients, I'll run it through a Miro board because everybody likes visuals. So, man, I really want to get into some LinkedIn automation. I'm running out of time. I got to take some questions, but maybe we do a part 2, or maybe I do a different one. I only got through 129 slides. I'm a little disappointed. I literally had, another like 20 minutes to go. So like, it's not even, it's all right. But yeah, let's do some questions. I'm totally down. And I'll also put my LinkedIn URL inside of the chat here, so anybody that wants to connect with me can.
Hi.
Oh, go ahead, Ibrahim.
Yeah. Hi. Such a comprehensive presentation, Taylor.
Thanks.
I've been following you for a while. I'm actually connected with you on LinkedIn. Anyways, I have a question regarding ABM marketing and obviously growth marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know, how do you integrate, if you have experience in this, which I'm sure you would, how do you integrate ABM marketing and growth marketing in a SaaS environment? So potentially, hypothetically speaking, for instance, if I'm potentially run ABM for location analytics based SaaS company.
Yeah.
How can I configure growth marketing and integrate that into ABM to obviously target the right accounts, enterprise industries?
Totally get it. Yeah, fair question. I don't mean this to be offensive or something. It's not meant that way. But I think sometimes as marketers, we like to add a little extra just to make it sound a little more difficult. So like, you should just call it like marketing strategy. And now it's like go to market strategy. And it's like, okay. So ABM, account-based marketing, it's just marketing. So what we're trying to focus in on is a very specific type of user. And your total addressable market globally could be really small. So like one of my clients, they were manufacturing ejection seats for the Joint 35 F-Strike fighter. So like there's literally 12 people on the entire planet that may be able to make a purchasing decision. So that means that we're going hyper targeted on this. So I'm using hyper personalized automation. I'm also making sure that I'm tracking all of these links that I'm putting in there using either UTM tools or unique link builder tools. And honestly, yeah, you can. So like I've tried a couple of different things with like custom audience ads on LinkedIn, and they don't really work. So you could have potentially 300 people within the same targeted ad, which is a pretty narrow audience. Anything less than that, they don't let you create the ad. So I was using fake LinkedIn accounts, in order to basically have 299 fake accounts and one real one. And I knew that none of the 299 people would be seeing it because they weren't real and nobody was going into the accounts, and it still didn't work. So I would say that the hyper-personalized outreach of making it very clear that you have understood them and you've seen them is the way to go. But account-based marketing for SaaS is the same as like marketing for SaaS. It's just decisions on basically how you're segmenting your groups and that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Sure. But yeah, happy to jam out. Reach out on LinkedIn.
Anyone else wants to ask a question directly, or can I go to the questions on the chat?
And I'll stay for a little extra as well if people just want to chill. I'm fine with that if that works.
So Richard asked, what are your views on using platforms like WordPress versus building a website from scratch?
Yeah, I don't understand the point of building from scratch. The amount of websites need to breathe. Like the idea of not being able to rapidly change things because somebody literally has to go into the code to implement anything is baffling. This is why no-code platforms have taken off. I think we all have this kind of, I don't know the word for it. I think everybody kind of has like, well, I'm a developer. So as a developer, we should be developing a custom website. And it's like, yeah, like, are you fucking selling the website, or are you selling the product or service or solution that you're actually just trying to create a storefront for? It's crazy. So the idea is, yes, use WordPress websites. They're fast, they're quick. You can get templates, throw them in, and get something you can immediately test and start throwing in sections, adding in different pages. That's the game. If it takes me 3 weeks to finally get a single landing page for one campaign that I'm running, and I should have unique landing pages for every campaign that has a very specific vertical, I'm never going to get it done because it's going to take 2 weeks to do everything. So the reality is, like, yeah, I understand WordPress is kind of like, but the alternative of building something custom code when you need to be focused on growth and focused on traction, which means revenue, it's a soft spot because I've lost out in these conversations to a CTO. It was like, yeah, but people are going to look at it. And it's like, yeah, I know. I'm trying to make it look good. So I don't know. Good question, though.
Next one. So from Shovanik, what are your thoughts on Google Analytics 4 versus Universal Analytics?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure for those in here that have ever tried GA4, it is a disaster. And this is one of the interesting things about Google, right? Just because somebody's like, oh, wow, these Google engineers. Like, have you seen that thing? It is not made for every business. It was made with apps and mobile first, yeah, which is cool. And also an element of kind of e-commerce. It does not fit for everybody. I'm super frustrated by it. I've given up. So like I tried making it work for a couple of clients. I'm like, can we just go back to Classic? Like I am so much happier with being able to develop reports and then throw things into Google Data Studio anyways. Is that cool? And most people are like, yes, fine, like whatever, do it. So yeah, not a fan. I think the outcome of that is more people are going to go to other platforms that do kind of the things that you used to be able to kind of take for granted. And that's coming, right? Like you need to basically set it up now so you have historical data come, July of next year, it's over. So yeah, not a fan. And I'm sure most people aren't. I haven't met anybody that's like, well, I love it. So I'm with you.
And last one, what is your experience with Matomo?
I've seen them around, never used it. I assume it's more of an enterprise tool, just haven't used it. So no opinion.
No opinion. Cool. There was, I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question, but I'll read it aloud. From RS, the issue with scraping with Trustpilot for scraping competitors' reviews is the lack of reviewer information, which makes the contact resolution very difficult.
Yes. So in some cases, you're going to be extremely challenged with finding enough information in order to find who actually wrote that review. That is very fair within Trustpilot. Within Capterra and GetApp and Software Advice, they want you to put your full name, your job title, and your company. That way the review carries some weight or has some merit to it. So I definitely understand within the whole scheme of Trustpilot, yeah, it's not an easy play. And in many cases, it's impossible. And you'll find that it's quite challenging to find the connected owner through like Google reviews from the standpoint of finding like a B2B email. Again, like I've done a ton of these different presentations for outreach, and a big area that I have to focus in on because I'm in Europe is GDPR. GDPR is a super easy workaround, and there are a few different things that you need to have in there, but I'm not going to bore everybody with it today. But I've also spoke at length about GDPR, and I promise it's compliant in terms of doing the outreach and also doing the scraping. So either way, it's a win-win. I don't know.
There are questions.
What's that?
There are more questions coming in.
Yeah, I'll stick around for another 15. That's fine, if that's okay with you.
No worries.
Okay.
Can I jump into the next one?
Sure.
Cool. From Daniel, which brands are making outstanding marketing in your opinion?
Which brands are doing outstanding marketing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so difficult because, yeah, it really depends on the niche. And it's interesting. So, like, there's some brands that I admire from, like, a B2C play that are just crazy good with, like, one particular area. So, like, I think Wendy's does the best job of fucking with people on Twitter and constantly ending up in the news for being smarmy as a brand Twitter account. Like, that's pretty badass. You don't see that on the B2B side. I think Leadfeeder is probably one of the more interesting players within kind of the area of the Nordics and a B2B play because they've scaled up heavily on the outreach and the hyper-personalization that they're using within LinkedIn. I also think that they've managed to find a nice balance with salespeople, and I admire that. I think that's super interesting. I don't know. It's so difficult. Like I've gotten that out of like a lot of presentations where it's like, who's doing a good job? And it's like, you know, like
nothing's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I had a better answer. I need to get a better answer for that. So I don't know. It depends on the day when you ask me, I guess.
Cool. And Jen Marie wants to know what's the best tool to enrich context information for hyper-personalization?
Yeah. All right.
Route.
Cool. So there's lots of different tools for that. So like, I like the guy. What's his name if we find that lead? I always forget his name. I get like all of his emails and I've talked with him a bunch. He's like living in a van, super interesting dude. But yeah, find that lead's not bad. It's okay. And it's probably one of the cheaper ones of the bunch. I think my jam is Apollo. Apollo has done some interesting things. And I'm certain the only way that they could have pulled this off is if they acquired data from basically exposed databases through nefarious purposes, but like good on them. I dig it. And so I think they're probably one of the better players. If you can afford them, Clearbit probably has the most accurate data of anybody. And, you know, like it's an enterprise tool. That's the problem. So if anybody's enterprise in here, like, yeah, go for it. I keep finding myself, in a situation where I can't afford these guys. And it's not like crazy expensive. I think it's $1,000. Can't remember, but yeah, I used to use these guys for form field enrichments. So as soon as you put in your email, everything enriches. CRM enrichment, like badass, but of course they don't list their pricing. I think it starts at $1,000.
Right. Next question then from Juan. Do you think the best strategy to understand your audience is competitor analysis, or would you focus on more data?
Well, I mean, competitor analysis is data. I think you do get into a lot of really interesting self-reflection moments by going through this, where it's like, oh, I never thought to do it that way. Why did they trigger that message to send out on the first hour instead of immediately? Or what was the purpose behind them pushing this? And sometimes there's no thought at all. It's just like, hey, we're throwing shit at the wall. But I think by looking at others, we're able to reflect a little bit more on ourselves. Like there's this expression, I think it's more in the US, but it's basically like we hate the worst parts of ourselves that we see in others. And so it allows you to get a little more critical without necessarily taking it personally by seeing others. In terms of using data, I mean, that's what this is all about, is making decisions purely based off of data, or at least standards in terms of user experience. But yeah, I do think, you know, like, I work with so many of these accelerators and like, oh, I'll talk to your customers. And it's like, okay, bullshit. half of them don't know, and they're just making up stuff because they want to be helpful. Like whenever I've traveled to the UK and I ask for directions, I have to ask 3 times because I'll get 3 different answers. And it's because people like to be helpful. So sometimes you get this false narrative or a false impression of what actually is because people want to be helpful and volunteer information because they can see that you could use it. So I say it's a blend of using your own data, making experiments, but also looking at your competitors and figuring out why something has worked. And also, if you have the time, be able to have some of those one-to-ones because you will learn so much. I always did whenever I was interviewing customers.
From Arun, what is the one tool that you would suggest for SEO for a B2B SaaS company?
Ahrefs. It's not cheap, but here's a secret. If you Google the word Ahrefs and group by, and you didn't hear it from me, you might be able to find it for cheaper. There's a gray area of legality there, so I didn't recommend that. I'm just saying do with that information what you will. But Ahrefs is my favorite tool.
All right. So next one from Andre. Some link building strategies that actually work.
Yeah, that is a good one. You know, the problem is like, there's like this old adage, I think Frank Sinatra used to use it, which is like, nobody goes there anymore, everybody goes there. And I used to get a little bit of traction with doing amplification. And amplification was basically reaching out to people after you publish an article and saying, hey, I mentioned you in my post and you should link back to us. That still works. But reaching out to publishers and saying we wrote something that you should link to almost never works because everybody's so tired of seeing that in their inbox. So it doesn't really play well. There are unfortunately paid avenues to go through. Like I used to think of Forbes as like this amazing like journalistic brilliance like on a par with like the Atlantic or something. And the reality is like they're just a broke publisher like anybody else. So like you can get published in Forbes. You just have to Google Forbes council member or Forbes Writers Council. I can't remember. And it's $3,000 to basically be able to publish an article a month. And that's a pretty high caliber publisher. There's a great book by Ryan Holiday. And Trust Me, I'm Lying is the name that I'm looking for. And he basically was outlining how he was able to get so much traction within American Apparel. Why is that? All right, whatever. Trust Me, I'm Lying is definitely a book. I don't know why it's not popping up. But yeah, so the idea of running through PR, and it is a purely pay-to-play, I think as technical marketers, like you have a pretty big convergence between technical and like branding and strategy. And it's like, go fuck yourself. Like that's not even a thing. But the reality is that on that side, it's still a bit of that personal relationship. So like, yeah, you can use Heyro, which I've been able to get some traction on. Heyro is Help a Reporter Out, and that's a free platform that you can find publishers and answer short questions, and then hopefully they give you a backlink. I do think the pay-to-play model is kind of where it's at, and that's putting out press releases, stalking reporters repeatedly on Twitter. Eventually they'll be like, okay, cool, what's up, bro? And, you know, I do think like the broken link play has been an interesting one. So you find the competitors' broken links, and you're basically then trying to figure out if you can get yours to replace it. I don't know. Like there's so many different link building strategies, but honestly, like it's a really tough game to do it the old-fashioned way of like outreach at scale and getting them. I've gotten a fair bit of backlinks by guest posts in the past, and you can find a lot of platforms that have guest posts, but like those are kind of meh. So I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that, but those are some ways that you can do it.
Right. So next question from Richard. To do all of this, do you think it's best to hire an agency, employ someone, or try to learn it yourself?
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
Well, I'm biased. So yeah, like of course, hire an agency, but that's always the chicken and egg question. So like I found as the CMO, you know, you're dealing with so many ambitious goals from the founders that have no context for what's feasible, timelines. Like the real deal with SEO is it is 6 months of foundational work and then 6 more months to scale. And anybody who's telling you different is either lying or selling you something. Like, it's just, that's the reality. And it's a long-term game. So knowing that, either you're building with the idea of building foundations using experts in an agency so that then you're kind of getting these things handed off and you're eventually in-housing and keeping the knowledge in-housing, or you find somebody who is an absolute killer of an expert and they're basically building for you, but then they need a team. So my thought has always been use an agency until it doesn't make sense to continue to do it. Get the foundations, because that is what you're paying for. You're paying to save time. And most people are like, well, we're going to hire some kids fresh out of school. They're going to figure it out. And it's like, okay, well, it's going to be a year and a half, but I guess if that's what you want to do, go for it. But I always recommend an agency. One is that I'm working for one and I own one, but yeah.
Taylor, so next question from Steven. Does LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is it worth the money?
So there are ways to be able to get LinkedIn Sales Navigator for $20. You'll have to Google it, and I can't give away that one. I'm not spending the money that it requires in order to do that. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is super helpful if you are doing any automated outreach. And I have a number of fake LinkedIn accounts that are managed by virtual assistants, and that seems to work reasonably well. And the only way that I'm able to basically continue to scrape at scale for the outreach is because I have Sales Navigator, which allows me for the advanced filters to be able to pull the lists of users out to then either build custom audiences or to do this outreach. So the long answer is, like, I don't know, $85 is not a lot of money, but for some people it is. And there are ways to get it for cheaper. But I've found that the value, if you're using that as one of the main lead drivers, like, score one deal and it's paid for itself in a year, it's crazy. So a lot of people are so afraid of, like, spending money. And I used to be that way until I realized, like, oh, that just saved me 12 hours, or that basically pays for itself because I got that one deal. Same thing.
All right. And finally, last question is about your course at Growth Secrets, is whether or not it has lifetime access.
Yeah. I mean, I'm about that life. That's fine. The iteration of this course, this has kind of been foundational with building the accelerator for Web 3.0. And my goal is to build out additional courses. So yes, I totally understand. I'm also planning on, like, ramping up the price. So yes, you do get lifetime access. For this iteration, I'm going to have a much longer course that comes out that should be closer to like 80 hours, which is just killing me putting together all the content. But yeah, thanks for asking. And $50 is not a lot of money when you break it down in terms of the things that you can use to then make money with. So something to think about.
Cool. I think we're done with the questions, guys. So if there's anyone who still has another question, please just speak up now. Otherwise, we're going to be wrapping this up.
Natalie's here.
Yeah.
Hey, Natalie. Catch up soon. I'm just going through the people that are still sticking around. It's like, I didn't know that guy. So interesting.
Taylor, do you have any last comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I know I move really fast and it seems overwhelming. Of course it does. I think just taking one of the areas of this and trying it out, or one of the tools even, and just getting through the anxiety of like, I don't know, working your way through it. There are YouTube videos for everything that I've covered. You don't have to pay for the vast majority of the things that are just kind of working your way through it. I think a lot of people get apprehensive about trying something new. All of this stuff works. Like, that's the thing. And by not doing it, you lose out on so much. So I hope that you've gained some value out of this. Like, that was the whole point of showing people this. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, if you are a direct competitor and you're running an agency, there's Gintz. Then connect with me, but I won't be able to give you my slides, but I will give my slides to everybody that I can. So Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'd love to do more of these. I'm sorry I ran out of time. I got to plan better.